The focus of today was figuring out how to use a cut piece of paper, or paper filter rather, on the top. And I usually don't use a paper filter on top because on a lever machine it encourages donating due to side channeling. But because I found this problem with this water dispenser where it's coming in on the left more, I started looking at, can I cut a paper filter, maybe not cover the whole filter, maybe just part of it. So that's what this is. And this is my Robusta shot. This is a Robusta from September 22nd. It was treated with humidity for a week, which added about 3% moisture. And the shot comes out nice, which this is to be expected. It cooled pretty quick. So one of the things I have noticed is when I had a large amount of channeling from the left side, the coffee was actually hotter because the water was hotter coming through. And as I've gotten more even coffee, the coffee coming out is cooler. So this went so well that I pulled a double shortly afterwards using this filter, which I'll show you in a minute. And it looks like a little rabbit. And the coffee came out different. It's a lot slower. Now it's coming out a little faster on the top instead of the left side, but I was able to slow this down and it's coming out enough of the other spots that this amount of channeling wasn't too bad. And this shot ended up being like 16% TDS at 21% extraction yield, which is ridiculous. I mean, and that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for like 20% TDS and 20% extraction yield. At the top here, this is the top of the puck, you can see it's like kind of sparse right there. It looks like kind of coarser. That's a sign of channeling from the top, because as you start to channel more, it shoves some of the finer particles down, which does cause some localized fines migration. From the bottom of the filter, there's some splotches, but nothing major. My next shot, I used my newer profile, again with this weird paper thing, and I got really good extraction. It was even. There was still a spot at the top that was coming in a little bit faster, but I have something to work with. I have some directionality on where to go, and I'm getting good readings from my taste sheet and my extraction yield and TDS from the refractometer. So I'm just really excited today because I haven't had this strength of shot in a bit, as I've been doing a lot of experimentation with the decent. So this is what it looks like. Looks like a little rabbit. So I'm testing out some new stuff, seeing if you should have someone that's completely circular all around or like a star. I'm not really sure. But when I remove this, we can take a look at the top. Right above where the paper filter was, towards the top and just a little bit to the left. It looks a bit coarser, which again is a sign of a bit channeling. And that's, as you could see in the video, in the top, it was blonding quite a bit. But that's okay. What's great about this is I can visually see an indicator that tells me what's going on, and that's more important at this point. So then I decided to pull a staccato shot. And this was using the shimmy by Fellow and followed by the 500 micron screen from Groove to get the 3 layers. The shimmy just goes a little bit faster for the finer layer. It takes about 5 minutes to prepare, to sift and prepare the shot. So this one channels at the top again. I think one of the issues is I'm using the paper filter at the top of the puck, and for a staccato shot, I really should use it at the top of the fine layer, because that's really where the channeling is occurring. Like in the coarser layer, coffee's just going everywhere because there's not much to stop it. I wanted to know better what was going on in the water dispenser, which comes before the water dispersion and before the shower screen. So I took the piece out and I put water into it using a little pipette. I was trying to have some controlled flow and see how the water goes around and then eventually comes up into these inlets, these 6 inlets, which each have 2 holes. Because I suspect this design is the cause of the water coming out on the left side more. The only problem is once you get to the top, which usually sits against metal, the water starts to come over the top. So this is a less effective experiment. So I wanted to redesign this experiment to better account for what's going on inside the piece, inside the machine. So I did this with a piece of tape. Now, tape may not be the best way, but we could do some tests and just see what the results are. So I put a piece of tape over, I cut a hole in, and instead of using water, I used milk. Well, diluted milk. So put a little bit of milk and then water to get a white water to go through this. So this is slow motion video just showing the path of the water as it goes around. And the theory is that the water will go around the path and not into any of the inlets. And then once it starts going into the inlets, because it's a pressurized system, it will go in evenly. And this assumption holds once it reaches a pressurized system or a steady state. For the transient state, which is what I'm looking at right here, it may act differently. So in this is the first test, and I did a few of them just to kind of get an idea of what's going on. Does the water come through evenly? Does it go more to the left than to the right? So in this case, this is oriented towards the machine. So if you're facing the machine, this piece sits in the same orientation. So the left side of this is the left side of the filter basket. So it doesn't quite go into the inlets evenly. And that isn't normally a problem if you're doing like a high flow. But if your profile starts off with a low flow like mine does, you'd have problems. My profile starts off with a low flow and slowly ramps up over 10 seconds to a flow of 1 milliliter per second. But I also use a high temperature. I max out the temperature. So one of the things that's also happening in here is that as the water hits the atmospheric pressure, it's going from 105 C to steam. And this could actually happen for water that's below 100 C, because temperature is an average of the kinetic energy. So some particles may have enough kinetic energy to vaporize. It's just when you're closer to 100 C, you're talking the vast majority of them have that amount of kinetic energy. So in those cases, the steam would shoot through this to go the shortest path. So unfortunately, I don't have a test right here for steam, but that would also be cool. So in this test, the milk came in. I was surprised. I think in one of the tests, a bubble forms. Now the pipette in this case is pushed slightly off center. I realized this after I started the test, but I couldn't do anything at that point. So what happens is it starts to fill the top 2 inlets first. So that's at which point you're filling the top 2 inlets. But what's interesting about here is you're not filling all the inlets at the same time. You'd like to, but it's just not the case. So at the very least, this assumption that you're filling all these inlets at the same time seems to be troubling. So I know this isn't the best test, but the point of these tests are to show that the design could go through some better runs for unit test and better understand if you're consistently off by the same amount on one side versus the other side, then it will handicap certain profiles, like my profile, to where it won't perform as well. So this continues to be seen in the rest of these, where where I stick between the last one and this one, I just rinsed it out. In the previous ones, the piece was dry inside, but typically in the machine it's a little bit wet, so you're not dealing with some of the surface tension of dry surfaces and coming in contact. So I just try to recenter this just a little bit to make sure I'm as centered as possible. And again, I'm using a pipette. I'm not using what is used, the actual metal piece that's used in the machine. This is just an exploratory test, and it's not supposed to say this is a terrible design. It's to say this design could be improved. And that improvement could potentially affect other people that don't necessarily see they have a problem. So the water's coming in here, and it goes in the bottom left first, and it goes in the bottom. So, I wonder, there could be a slight offset in the bottom ones. But this goes to my point that it's going out the left first. And in this case, I also have, it's yellow underneath. The previous one was on the countertop or on a paper towel. And this one is on a piece of plastic to prop it up so the liquid will drain. Because if it doesn't drain, then you have an air bubble that'll get stuck there. So then the tube came up a little bit, and it ended up pushing a little bubble through. I did one last shot, which was like the regular shot. This again came out very strong in extraction yield and TDS. And I used a slightly different paper, which I'll show in a second, which is more like an oval. And I think I'm going to use regular shots at the moment until I dial in the profile well enough, and then start tweaking it for staccato shots. Actually, this shot isn't just a regular shot, it's a staccato tamp shot. So that means I dose it, dose half, distribute, tamp, then dose the second half, distribute the second half, and tamp the second half. And this is what the paper filter looks like at the top. So it's off-centered to try to pull water over. Anyways, come back tomorrow.